Okay, so this is a quick look at the cylinder block. I've already honed it and hand polished the crank. I do not recommend hand polishing a crank. I recommend sending it off. There's a little bit of dust on that one there. I had oil on it and I need to wipe it off. I recommend sending a crank off to have it checked, but this was a newly rebuilt engine that had a head gasket leak, so I just ran some very, very fine sandpaper over it, and if it wasn't so dusty, you would see it's completely polished. I got it down to about, there's too much light there, about, I would say, I think it was 15 or 1800 sandpaper grit. So, people say use emery cloth. That's what it was. It's not exactly sandpaper. It's a cloth backing. You can get it at Home Depot in the paint section. Alright. I've already honed the cylinders. The cylinder walls have been honed, you see. That's these right here. Pistons go up and down. In those holes, the piston connecting rods connect to this part of the crank. I've already changed the bearings, which are under here. You take these two bolts off, and there's a bearing race on each side, the block side and this side. Do not put any oil between this and the bearing, or between the block and the bearing. I use brake parts cleaner. Spray it on there, wipe it off with a paper towel a couple of times, make sure you get all the oil off of it. So I didn't have any problem really with this engine. It just started to get gummed up in the cylinder wall, and I had a head gasket leak, so I completely rebuilt the engine. Because that's about the only way to go is to check everything when you've got an internal problem. So I'm changing the piston rings and the connecting rod bearings, which are on the ends of the piston connecting rods, and these main bearings. You see this here being the front of the engine, so that's the number 1. Here, I'll turn it here. Okay. Number 1 main bearing, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5. Even though there's 4 cylinders, there's 5 main bearings on a 4-cylinder engine. Okay, so having said that, this is a 4-cylinder Chevy. I'm going to now work on changing the rings out on the pistons. I've already cleaned those off, and I'll do a video on that next. Okay, I hope this was informative. Okay, just a short clip here. These are my pistons lined up, already ringed, and I need to pop my bearings in there, but I was going to get this on video. I marked everything. I'm using a 2-liter Coca-Cola bottle rack. It's perfect because it's got 8 holes, and you probably won't be building anything bigger than a V8. So you can do 4 like I'm doing for a 4-cylinder, or you can do all 8. Holds the pistons perfectly. There's plenty of room for them to play. I marked the engine front. 1 for cylinder 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then that way you got engine front here. You won't mess up the orientation of the pistons. Also note that on a piston it has marks for the front. Those 2 notches right there on this one. Okay, means the front of the piston, towards the front of the engine. Okay, so now I've shown that, there's another trick I've got for building engines. Well, of course, you got to have this stuff. Engine assembly lube. This is Moly graphite type. Okay, But here's the trick I was actually going to show. I took a ring, one of the compression rings, and snapped it. It makes the perfect tool if you don't use the snap side, that's the sharp edge. You use this side here, okay? Makes the perfect tool for cleaning out the grooves in the side of the piston where they were, all the carbon that's built up in there, so you can clean them out. And then I use a copper wire brush, a very small one, to clean out those grooves. But when you take this and you run it through there like this right here, you can scrape everything out. That is the best thing I've come up with for cleaning the ring grooves. Okay. I guess another thing would be using a cylinder hone. I used one that I put onto the edge of a drill gun, and as you can see, hone the cylinder walls in that engine, and they're pretty decent. I got all the up and down lines I left a cross hatch pattern. You can see the lines that's in a swirl. It needs a cross hatch pattern left, so you go in and out of these holes here with the cylinder honing tool on the end of a drill gun. The stones, you tighten them up so they're pretty snug, and you use low speed and you go in and out real slow, and you just kind of rock like you're in a rocking chair, going forward and backwards, honing out the cylinders with a drill gun and a cylinder honing tool. And I'll be able to hopefully put mine on video in a minute. In order, your pistons need to be in order. The rest of it you don't have to worry about, because look, on the top of a piston, it's got a notch facing forward, or an arrow. That's the forward notches right there. That's going to be the front of the engine, so you also don't have to worry about your bearing being mixed up, because look, this is the original bearing. It shows somewhere. That notch there on this bearing matches that notch in the connecting rod. On the other side, you have your oiler hole in the bearing. It's cut into the bearing. So you're going to match up the oiler hole being on the opposite side of where this is. Okay? This one on the other side is over here. Okay? That's on the cap, which goes down into here. The cap, this will be over here, and of course the oiler hole has to match up on this side with it. So I'll show you that. This one here, this is a cap, okay? The oiler hole, when you put it down on here, onto the piston, those two made up, so the oil can flow between them, okay? So you can't mess this up, as long as you keep this in another box numbered 1, 2, 3, and 4. You want them to be numbered. Now, take that back off. You notice I have rubber hoses on the piston connecting rod bolts. There's a reason for this. You do not want to score up your crank or your cylinder wall, especially after you've honed it. But even taking one apart, take the caps, the nuts off the threaded rod, and take the caps off. Put these on. Then you take a wooden rod, you stick down into the cylinder hole, and you put it right here on the inside, and then you use a hammer to knock that wooden rod to knock the piston out through the top. In other words, you have to take the head off the motor. It has to be upside down, like this, upside down. That's the crank. See, on an engine stand, you can turn it, and it'll turn it right side up, and then you can turn it upside down. Now, having said that, we're going to put this back. There's the box that I kept these separate in. Okay. Now, this is where the rings were. The rings were in these grooves. I cleaned them a lot. What you're going to need to do is take a ring and break it, one of the original rings, okay, and snap it in two, and it fits perfectly back in its own slot. Use the smooth side of it, the manufactured side of it, not the part you broke, but the smooth side, basically the end of the ring as it comes around like this. You want to use the end of the ring after you break it and scrape all the crud, basically the carbon buildup, out of those lines. And then I go behind it with a brass wire brush. I bought a pack of 3. They got them at hardware stores. This is the hardware store type. Use this end to get in there. I've trashed this one. Anyways, you just squeeze them together best as you can, get them in the slot, run back and forth a bit. That's after you first scrape it as best as you can with the old broken piston ring. All you got to do is break one of them. You put the rest in order. Now, going from there, sealed power, that's just what I'm using today. Nothing special. It's just piston rings. They're not pro-moly or anything. They're not made for nitrous. They're just piston rings. So, what do we got here? If you look at the edge of the flap, top groove, second groove. You can't mess that part up. On the other side, bottom groove. Okay, so one is compression, and that's for oil right here. So what you got is 2 compression. Let's see what we got here. Pull these out. I know this is a horrible video I'm trying here, and there's the instructions. They do come with instructions. All rings being a bit different, it does matter. I don't normally even look at the instructions, but for this video, I'm going to stress that you read the instructions. Here's why. This should be informative. Okay, typical economy ring set. Standard rings. Now, if you'll see, the edge of this ring is shaped like that, and cut down, shaped like that, cut down. The dot always means the top of the piston ring. Dot means the top. They used to mark them with paint. Okay, now, this is your top and bottom groove. You put a ring there. Oh, that's your oil ring assembly. Yeah, you're going to put your it says vents at the bottom of the ring, okay? So you put your vents at the bottom. Alright, now look, these are a bit different. See that? Okay, so the picture does not always tell exactly what you're supposed to do. Let's see here, this being 40W type, okay, that's the problem. These are a bit different. SS50U stainless steel O-ring. There we go. Okay, you're going to put one of these on that bottom ring right there. You're going to snake it around like this right here. Look at me doing this one-handed. Okay. You're going to hook it on here, come around with your finger, and get it around till it both goes around, okay? And then you're going to pick this one and go further and just kind of screw it a bit onto the piston by pushing down this backside. Go all the way around with your finger with it, okay, and push it on further. I can't do that one-handed. Now, this, though, is going to go, wait, I'm sorry. These are going to go first, okay? One on each side. These are very, very thin. You see how thin those are? Okay, that goes with the oil ring assembly. This is a lot of them. one goes first, then that goes next, then another one on top of it in this same slot, the bottom slot. Then you get the second groove, then you get the top. Okay, so this is what it looks like with just the oiler ring, okay, not the top and bottom on it also. So, what I want to do is show you how to do that. Take number 2 piston here for you. Sorry. Okay. Got another one out of the box. One-handed piston ringing. Okay. You're supposed to line it up with this pin. Okay. And what you do is put one end on the piston. Let's try this. One end in the groove there, come around with it, and it goes right in. You want them to butt up to each other. Some lock, these do. You want to put this lock ring in. So this goes first. I'm sorry, earlier I said in the earlier video that you put the bottom ring on first. I didn't mean necessarily first. It just goes in the bottom. Okay? It actually locks this in here. So let's do it like this here. Alright. Now, the way this shows is you hook it in. The bottom ring goes around this way. Top ring goes around that way. Okay? You hook it in here. Then you run your finger around the whole thing and you're pushing down on the ring, and it'll just go right into the groove all the way around. Then it'll click right in. It's okay if it's going to scrape a little on the side of the piston. It's not going to hurt anything. Okay? Then when you're done with those two, you're going to basically put them on this same way, basically, for your other 2 rings, the top and middle. Okay? I hope that part of the video was informative also. So there's one on, number 2 on, with this almost on. I'm going to do that with 2 hands. Okay. Sometimes they're different. Just so happens in this engine, they're pretty much the same. But they do have a mark top and second, so I'm going to mark them that way. I'll put them in that way. Now look, here's the little dot that you're looking for. That is your top of your ring. That little divot, it doesn't show up, so I'll get the paper for it. That little divot right there, that is the top of your piston ring. They all have them, except for these. The dot, it's a scratch is what it is. That's just a scratch. So, alright, we got the bottom, and then these are top groove, and then there's the others here in the box. Now they are marked green. You see that green? Green paint? Now, but here's what I wanted to show you. Okay, look. This ring is not exactly just a ring. I'm going to try my best to show the edge is chamfered to the inside. Now, of course, the dot marks the top. Okay? But here's the other thing. The way they're shaped, like I'm trying to get my camera in here as best. Maybe I'll get it in between the rings. Oh, this is hard to show. Sorry. I am trying to show. I may not be able to show it. That the ring, there we go. I believe you can see that the ring is on the outside flat. On the inside, once you get to the inside, it's beveled from the top towards the outside to the bottom. I hope you can see that. Anyways, so basically there's a curve on the inside of the ring a bit that goes like this. The outside is 90 degrees, the inside is curved, but the way these rings are shaped, the top one is actually shaped more completely square. Okay? Alright. The plan is you replace your rings, then you replace your bearings. Okay? These are your piston rod connecting bearings, not your main bearings. Your main bearings are on the block over there. There's two pieces to them. They go on the cap. The way you do it is you can push on one side, like because it notches into there, you push on this side and it goes out the other side. Maybe hard to do holding this camera. Yeah, I'm going to have to tap on it with something. So anyways, and then you clean this part out with brake parts cleaner, no oil, and then you put the new one in by notching it in, just hook it in this side. You set it down straight in there, but you hook it in this side a bit, and then that side's not in yet, and then you push down and it'll snap. When you hear it snap, you know it's good into place. You don't want your fingerprints on there, okay? Like I just got on these, but it doesn't matter. These are the old ones. You don't want to put your fingerprints in here, okay? So I'm going to wear doctor's type surgical gloves, plastic gloves. You can get those at the hardware store also. And then when I pop them in, I'm going to always use engine assembly lube. This is one type, okay? Moly graphite. Some people don't use this type. When you get... Okay, so what I have here is I've taken this bearing out of this connecting rod from in here, and here it is. So if you were installing a new one, first you'd want to clean all this out with brake parts cleaner and leave no oil in there. To install it, you would then, this is trying to do this one-handed so I can get it on video. So you would then get that side, like put it in like this, and push it this way till it comes up to where it stops. Okay. And then with your thumb on this side, push down until it's in place. Match up both sides. You don't want to push too much. If you went too far, you push it back. Nothing to it. Make sure the same clearance on this side as there is on this side. And don't let any oil be between this and the connecting rod. And also, when you're doing this, wear some surgical gloves. This one is the old one. I still have to clean it up with brake parts cleaner and wipe it down real good with a paper towel. So this one doesn't matter, but I will be wearing gloves when I do the other. Again, to get it loose, you push down on this side here. It'll come up. Then you just kind of pull in pick up at the same time. Comes right out, see? Now, over to checking rings here. I have the piston rings installed now on that piston. Actually, all of them. They're all sitting over here in a rack. Okay. Now, the way to check your piston rings. You put them in the block as shown here. I have 2 of them. This is the old one that I cleaned up and set in here just for reference for 2 reasons. Now I know my rings are correct, but if you don't know if you got the right rings, you can check them like this. You put the piston ring from the old one in one piston, and you see that gap right there? You measure it. You don't want it to be over 40 for this particular engine, which is a Chevrolet. I wouldn't say over 40 for any engine. Anyhow, and if it's too close, you got to file it. You put it in a vise, and you use a file, and you file on it a little bit, and then you check it again. You can push them into the cylinder hole squarely by putting a piston in upside down, pushing it in there, and be the same distance. Or you can just push it in with your fingers and measure from the piston ring to the top here where the head goes. Now, this one here measured out less than that, of course, because the other one is worn. It's a worn ring, so it's going to be spread a little more apart. Now, the way you check these is with a feeler gauge. Okay, a feeler gauge is a tool that has all these. It also has gaps for spark plugs on it and brass. I don't use the brass. And trying to show you with a flashlight here, the 0.16. Okay, let's see here. Over here it's 0.26 on this side. Then it goes back over to this side. 25, 24, 23, 22, 21, 19, 18, 17, 16, all the way down. You put 2 of them together and add them together. Now, of course, you're not going to put a 25 and a 24 together, but what you will do is a 16 and a 5, well, let's see. This is a 10 and a 16. That makes it 26. Okay, but you have a 26 over here, so you can do it either way you want. You can put these 2 together, and then what I usually do is just fan them out and see which one fits into this ring gap here. If I can show it correctly with the flashlight. Right there. See? Whichever one fits. So, this one, we'll try 19. 19 fits. You check your specifications and see if it's enough. If it's not enough, you take the ring out. Of the cylinder hole. And you file the same side every time. You don't file one over here, one over here. File the same side. And there you have it. And then when it's compressed, it'll be closer together. And you'll have the right amount of clearance. That's what you're measuring, is this gap between here and here. When you put it in the cylinder hole, you have to squeeze it together by hand. And it gets closer, see? Okay. I hope that was informative. And I'll get a couple more videos up. Okay. So now I've taken out the bearings. Let's see, now I've taken out the bearings there out of the connecting rods of the pistons. Here's one end of one connecting rod of one piston. So, you see how bright this new one is? Let's see if I can do this one-handed so I can get it on video. A little difficult to do this one-handed, but I can do it. See, I'm wearing surgical gloves so not to get anything on the bearings there. And sweet. That's all there is to it. You want to make sure that this over here on the edge is the same as this on that edge. Okay, so now I have this one here ready. This side here needs to be taken out. I'm going to one-handed replace the bearing. Push on this side really hard. Pop that bearing out. We're going to clean it with some brake parts cleaner and pop a new bearing in. And that's going to be tight. Okay. Alright. So, I've got these end caps here pretty well cleaned out, ready to go. And just to show how easy this is, nothing to it, you put one in here. By the way, I use brake parts cleaner and paper towels to clean these up. Put one in, push it into place. Put another one. Oh, let's see, I'll just go up on the piston side here. Get you to get a look at that. Put one here. One-handed. Next one. Okay, a little hard to do one-handed. The next one, well, move this out of the way, and this one here. We're going to this one. And so you see it's not an impossible job for anybody to do this. Okay, and the next one, I'm just grabbing them as they come out of the pack. There was no oil on them. I'll wipe the back of a couple of them. You can clean them with brake parts clean on the back side, won't hurt nothing. These are polished and ready to go. Okay, and the next two. Okay, so there you go. Make sure you clean this side out with some brake parts cleaner and napkins about twice to get any oil from back there. And if your bearings come oiled, to keep them from rusting, then you clean them with brake parts cleaner before you pop them in. Okay. That should be the end of that. And you see I got rubber hoses on the end of these bolts. That's so when you put the pistons back to the cylinder hole, they'll come up, and where they meet the crank, these won't scratch the new polished crank. There's that. Get your piston rings on. Some people dip these in oil. The least you can do is pour some motor honey or some oil all over this. Just be crazy with it, because you're not going to get any oil until the engine first starts up. Okay? And make sure you put some of that engine assembly lube on here, on this surface and on the other one, as well as on these main bearings whenever you put them in. And then when you connect them, what you're going to do is you have to turn the engine upside down and put, as you're pushing the piston in, as you're pushing it in, what you're going to do is the rings are actually going to be sticking out. You have to compress those with a ring compressor. The ring compressor tool you can get at Advanced Auto Parts, any Auto Parts store. And what you want to do is when you compress them, you're going to tap it in with a hammer. You do this with the engine right side up. But you don't want to scratch your newly polished crank area with the bolts here. So you put rubber hoses on them, and you're real careful, and you just tap it in, and you're going to make sure you oiled up your cylinder holes before you do that with a rag without lint on it. You could use a paper towel. So I hope this was informative, and I'll show how to put the rings on. I'll put them on in just a bit. Careful not to snap the ring. You can break a ring. This being said, I might have to pick this up over this side and I need. Okay, so these two are not butted now. I'll get this around here. It's in there. Now it's on the bottom. Separate these, set them where they go, line them up with the boss. They are free floating and it's in there. Now you just got to put the top one on. Let's do this real quick. Alright, that one went around this direction. Okay. That's the bottom rail. Alright, the top rail goes around in this direction. Alright. You're going to want to hook it over here. You don't want to line these up. So, set that in the groove. As you come around, it gets easier. The hardest part about the whole deal is this part. Really trying not to score the side of the piston. There. Free floating. Everything's good. You want it to stay right there. Okay. I'm going to line that up. Hope that was helpful. Okay, here we have it. This ring, the center ring, the gap is on one side. You go to the other side of the piston. The top ring, the gap is on the other. Okay? And the dot is the top of the piston ring. These are butted up together or locked, depending on what type you have. These two butt up together. And then I made sure that that top oiler ring lock ring is not here, but over to the side, and that this one is over on the bottom, over to the side of these two. I put my thumb here on that part of the ring when I'm putting on the lock rings, which is that top one and that bottom one. It holds it in place. And then as I need to, if I'm coming around, I push this side in and let it come around to get past it for the bottom, and then also to push it in on the top. Having said that, these two are lined up with the pin. Okay? And that's ready to go. Alright, so I'm just using some oil treatment. You could use motor honey, some really thick oil like 2050. Just going to get some on the piston and get it really, really wet here. All parts of it here. Some people dunk them in oil. I don't find that to be necessary, but hey, everybody's different. So, now that I've made a mess, I'm going to get all the parts there. Sorry, you can't see what I'm doing. All of that there. All the aluminum parts that are going to touch the cylinder wall. And then the cylinder wall itself could use a bit. That would be next. Okay, catch it before it gets down the bottom. Okay. Now, got a little on the crank. Might as well do the next one. Get some oil off my hands here. All over this piston's good. That's good. Now, okay, so what you're going to do is just for now, I'm going to set it here just for a moment. And I'm going to get my compressor tool. Don't need this glove anymore. Not really. Okay. So, just a bit there. Now, so that you can see is the reason I'm setting it here. You don't normally set it here. I just wanted to show you, you align the gaps on the piston rings so that one is towards the back, one is towards the front, all the way around here on the other side. You move one, the other one moves. That's what you get. Let's see here. One's on the back side, and one's on the front side. Okay. Now, you use this tool piston ring compressor tool. Okay, now you use this tool, piston ring compressor tool. It has a little key. You put this in here. Make sure it's big enough here. Supposed to put oil on the inside of this too. Okay. Okay. Now, Slide it over the piston. I'm taking a lot more time than I normally would. It's kind of hard to get things on camera. Now, tighten this up. Okay, and make sure you have the. I'll show you this on the camera. I'll move the camera. Make sure that you have the front of the piston, these two marks, that notch and that notch, towards the front of the engine, which is here. Okay. Now, what you're going to do is take a hammer, the handle of a hammer, and you're going to want to tap, 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 while aligning from the bottom of the engine so that the end of the piston goes around where the crank is. You're going to reach under there and align it while you're tapping with the hammer handle, preferably a rubber handle mallet or plastic handle mallet, onto the piston, and it's going to push it right through. And that'll pop the piston in. Okay, so the piston is here. Ring compressor tool is on it. I'm sitting in a chair because I've already got everything lined up, even in the bottom. And we're going to put a piston in the hole. Okay. Let's see here. I can't do this. Oh yeah, that's in the mind. Going in real smooth. And this is rubber. Rubber. And that's in there. That is in the hole. That is how you put a piston in an engine. Okay. Make sure everything's there. It is right there. Make sure everything's right on the bottom. And it is. And there you go. Maybe hard to see, but it's in there. Alright, and that's what they look like back in their cylinders there. 2 up, 2 down. That's some work. Now I gotta put the lifters on, in, and set those. Other than that, oil pan, head, gasket and head, well, oil pump, and throw it back together. There it is. Nothing to rebuild a motor.